Okay, next thing then we're going to look at is where to locate the deflector angle. So what I like to do is start the deflector angle even right here with the front edge of the discharge opening, and then let it carry back as far as it will go. So what we have to do is, since it's going to sit over the top of the blocker plate, then we have to clear or cut clearance then for anything that's going to be in our way right here. So in this particular case, we're going to see we're about here is the front edge. I'm going to locate here, and I've got to clear out in this area. So usually when I clear it out, I always make sure that I leave at least a ½ inch on either side. So in this case, here's kind of the center of my obstruction. I'm going to go approximately a ½ inch either side of that, and then I'm just going to put a mark on here where I want to cut. I typically cut this at an angle and cut it to within about a ½ inch of the back edge, because that's how much is going to overlap here on the blocker plate itself. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and cut this. One thing to remember is that this part out here is going to be a little bit unsupported because it's out past the end of the hinge plate. It should be okay though. That's why it's important to leave this ½ inch piece of material here. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and cut the, clear this out. And what I typically do here is cut down to this, within a ½ inch of that edge. Then I just take a pair of channel locks or something similar, and you can take this and just bend it. So there's our clearance. So that marker I was using is just a chalk marker. It wipes right off. So then this is going to sit in here. So there's a couple things you got to be careful of when you put this deflector angle on. If it's right flat on top of the surface, then when it opens and closes, it can drag. So you want to, usually what I do is I take this piece that I cut off and I use it kind of as a spacer. On this particular deck, this is the high point, and so I'm going to put this guy underneath here and let that kind of be my marker for how high I want it. And then the back end is going to just be balanced between the upper obstruction and the lower obstruction. So once we have that in place, then what we want to do is go ahead and attach it to the hinge plate itself. In order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to remove this red backer on here. We've got this adhesive, so you have to be a little careful here that you don't, it'll stick to just about anything. So you just got to be careful as you do that. All right, so we're going to center this in our area here. We're going to make sure that the hinge plate is shifted as far toward the rear as it will go. And then we're going to go ahead and close this hinge plate. A bit of a balancing act, but so once I go close with this, it's going to stick. So I kind of need to make sure I'm in the right spot. Okay, so there it is. It's adhered on here. Okay, so that's a good starting point. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to set this blocker plate back up in here. It should close down over the top of that. And so I need to make a little adjustment here to get this hinge plate so it lays flat against that blocker plate. So I'll take a 3/8 socket and loosen this up and slide it out to do that. Just shifts out. I've shifted in here to make sure that everything is flat. So now I've got this in a good position. I've got the deflector angle in here. I'm ready to go ahead and drill the holes to go ahead and mount the plastic piece to the hinge plate. And in order to do that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, so you can do it a couple ways. What I found the easiest way is to take a clamp and go ahead and clamp this plastic piece, the blocker plate, to the hinge plate. What you're trying to do is to make sure that this plastic blocker plate doesn't shift around while you're trying to drill the holes or while you're drilling the holes. The other way to do it is if you don't have a C-clamp, you can drill the first screw, take it off, and go ahead and put the T-nut in, and then run that screw back in before you drill the next hole. Then drill the next hole, do the same procedure, put the T-nut in, clamp it back up, and then your two screws that you have in there will be what secures it and keeps it from moving around while you drill the rest of the holes. So in this case, I don't have to do that because I've already got it clamped in place. Okay, so with my drill, the bit size that I'm going to use is a 1/4 inch bit, and we'll go ahead and drill all 8 of these holes, and then I'll show you how to install the T-nuts in here. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get in a position to put the T-nuts in. I always use a block of wood when I get ready to drive these T-nuts in. So let's show you what's in the bag with the T-nuts. And when I dump these out, I always put them into some kind of container, a little dish, a little plate, something, because it's too easy to lose them. So we've got in here, we've got a little card that shows you this tool is in here along with this T-nut. And the purpose of this tool is it allows you to turn this into a punch that you can drive the T-nut into the back of the blocker plate with. And then of course there's a screw for the front side, little Phillips head screw that we'll use to attach the two together. Okay, so we're going to set this card aside. We'll go ahead and pull our blocker plate off. Now, the important thing to remember is that the T-nuts go on the back side. So when you set it down on your board, you want to make sure you turn it face down. Okay, this is the side the T-nuts are going to go in from. All right, so we've got our holes in here. Let's go ahead and get a T-nut with our hammer. And the reason that we used a block of wood is because this T-nut is just a touch longer than the thickness of this material. So if you lay it on a concrete floor and drive this in, you're going to mess up the end of this T-nut, and you're going to have to replace it. So it's no fun. All right. So we're going to take our punch. We're going to line up onto the hole that we have here. Drive it down until it's solid. Okay, with all 8 of those driven in, the next thing we want to do is turn it over and make sure that we don't have any material that's going to block our screw from being able to get in. So we want to make sure that's clear. Sometimes you have to use a utility knife to peel that open, but we're in good shape here. All of these are clear where I'm going to be able to screw it together. Okay, so this is how it came off. We're going to go ahead and set this back in here. Get a couple of these screws started to make sure we're in a good location. So I've got a Phillips head bit in here that I can use then to go ahead and run the rest of these screws on in. I'm going to start them all in before I secure any of them all the way down. Make sure they all line up. So an alternate way to install this deflector angle is to go ahead and get this plate installed, then mark and cut your deflector angle and loosen this deflector, this blocker plate up enough that you can slide that deflector angle in. That's a little trickier because this adhesive wants to grab real quick, but that's an alternate way to go ahead and put this on. And in fact, I think the instructions guide you to do it that way. I have found that that this actually works out better doing it the way that I did. So we've got all of these screws started in. So the next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and crank these down tight. Now these screws, you can crank them down pretty hard. So you want to make sure you've got a good Phillips bit and you keep pressure on it so you don't end up messing up your screws. So all those are secure. We'll get this clamp out of our way. You can see there's the T-nuts, the back side of the T-nuts. They're insecure here. You want to make sure there's no gaps under the back side of these T-nuts, which means you pulled the screw in hard enough that it doesn't have a gap. If you get a little gap, potentially then this screw could rattle out. Typically doesn't happen, but that's the potential that you've got there. So there you go, blocker plate installation. Final step that you might want to do is you may want to round these corners. Okay, so I typically will do that. You also may have this had a longer plate hung out more on the back than you want it to. If that is the case, then what you can do is you can go ahead and mark a line on the back end here and cut that off. What I found works pretty good is a saber saw, but you can also use just a hand saw. You can use a Sawzall. Anything that you can cut wood with, you can cut this plastic with. You can leave it square. It just doesn't look as nice, as finished as it could look.